Building empathy for learners with impairments and disabilities.
As an instructional designer, you'll likely be designing content for all kinds of learners with various impairments, disabilities, and challenges in learning. In order to design content that's truly accessible for all learners, it's important to reflect on your understanding of what it means to have an impairment or a disability, and that starts right now with some background information about the four most common types of impairments and disabilities.
First, let's talk about visual impairments. Visual impairments can include low vision, such as when vision is 20/70 or poorer when corrected, blindness, when vision is 20/200 or poorer when corrected, or color blindness, which affects the way that we see and process color. Challenges for learners with visual impairments or disabilities include difficulty or complete inability viewing visual content, difficulty with color contrast when looking at printed or web-based content, and issues with color blindness in which learners cannot perceive the difference between two different colors shown. Additionally, learners with visual impairments may need to sit in certain places in the room to be able to see more clearly or use certain tools and technologies. Visual assistive tools include screen magnifiers, screen readers, and text-to-speech software. I've built empathy learning about learners with visual impairments and disabilities by seeing how difficult it is to access content that has not been designed accessibly. For example, trying to access a PDF or a web page that hasn't been designed for use by a screen reader. I can see how frustrating this would be for someone who's just trying to access and understand the same content that another learner is without a visual impairment. I've also reflected a lot on how popular color schemes and web designs are often not created with enough color contrast or with colors acceptable for people with color blindness. This has really shown me that there's a lot of work to be done in terms of accessibility for visual impairments, and it's inspired me to pay much closer attention to this in my own designs. The next kind of impairment we'll discuss is auditory. Auditory impairments can include hearing loss, in which someone is not able to hear as well as a person with normal hearing, or deafness, someone with very little or no hearing. Challenges that someone with an auditory impairment may experience include inability to hear the speaker in a learning environment, may need to sit in a specific place so that the hearing is easier for them, may need an interpreter with them in order to communicate, and may need to have visual access to the speaker's mouth and face in order to lip read. Auditory assistive tools include hearing aids and cochlear implants, use of sign language and/or interpreters, the use of speech to text, the use of closed captions as seen here, and additionally the use of vibrations or lights on technology so that they can see when a notification comes rather than hear. I've built empathy for learners with auditory impairments by learning how accessibility goes much further than simply closed captions and sign language. Especially in the digital world with virtual learning and lots of different learning environments, it's really important to consider the full picture when thinking about how to make content more accessible for people with auditory impairments. The next feature we'll discuss is physical impairments. Physical impairments can include disease, injury. They can be caused by disease, injury, or birth defects. For example, a spinal cord injury or an amputation, arthritis, neuromuscular disorders, and fibromyalgia. Challenges faced by learners with physical impairments might include mobility issues within a classroom or on a campus, difficulty typing, writing, or using a mouse or any other tool required of them in the learning environment, or for some disorders, chronic pain that can impact their focus and motivation for learning. Physical assistive tools for learners with physical impairments include wheelchairs and walkers, ramps and lifts, voice recognition software, alternative keyboards, and mouses that can be controlled by the eyes or the mouth. Building empathy here, I've had the opportunity to work with several children with physical impairments due to some diseases, and it really opened my eyes to the frustration that they can experience with many of the common things that we take for granted, like typing or getting on the bus. And it's made me realize that it's very important to consider that people can have physical impairments that can be visible or invisible, and that it can impact the learning environment and their motivation for learning in a variety of ways if those impairments are not taken seriously or the content is not created with accessibility in mind. Lastly, we'll discuss cognitive impairments. Cognitive impairments cause greater difficulty with mental tasks than someone without a cognitive impairment. They can include things like brain issues like traumatic brain injury, dementia, Alzheimer's. They can also include genetic disorders like Down syndrome. Difficulties faced by learners with cognitive impairments could include trouble following along with content, alternatives needed for traditional learning methods such as lectures or readings, or difficulty with memory and critical thinking. Cognitive assistive tools available for learners with cognitive impairments include audiobooks, note-taking systems, and memory aids. The biggest way that I've built empathy in this regard is by realizing that many of the assistive technologies and systems created for people with cognitive impairments will actually benefit all kinds of learners, like note-taking systems, audiobooks, mnemonic devices, and job aids. The biggest takeaway from my exploration of the different kinds of impairments and disabilities that affect learners is that learning can be as accessible as you, the instructor, make it or not, depending on your decisions on how to make content accessible and the attention that you pay to this. Many of the tools and technologies available actually benefit everyone, not just people with disabilities and impairments. Therefore, it's in everyone's best interest to keep accessibility in mind and to design content with accessibility at the forefront.